Holiday lunch looked warm from the outside, but inside it felt like rehearsed theater. Fake smiles placed exactly where they belonged, polite nods functioning like props, and an atmosphere that was alive, just arranged. I felt like I was sitting on a stage where everyone knew their lines except me. The room smelled of cinnamon and control, and right when dishes were being passed around like traditions on autopilot, my mother leaned slightly in and pressed her voice into my ear. Sharp, quiet, surgical. Stop relying on the family. That was it. No build-up, no discussion, no humanity. Just a sentence delivered with the precision of someone who had practiced it until it landed exactly the way she wanted. No one reacted. Not my father, who didn't even look up as he continued cutting his food into identical squares, as if math could protect him from conflict. Not my brothers, who kept chewing, swallowing, existing. No one blinked. No one defended. No one hesitated. I didn't cry, I didn't argue, I didn't shake. I took a sip of water, let it slide down my throat like steel hardening, and I smiled. Because the instant she said it, something clicked in me, something cold and liberating. They thought they were cutting me off. But they had no idea I had already stepped away months ago, long before this performance. People assume chaos defines struggle. But I'm the opposite. I'm the calm one, the reliable one. I show up, do my job, pay my bills, organize everything nobody else wants to deal with. I don't scream or crumble. I handle pressure like it's oxygen, not weight. That didn't appear out of nowhere. It was carved into me since childhood. I was trained to patch holes before anyone noticed. The wall was cracking. I was trained to absorb tension so others could breathe easy. I was trained to carry the emotional, financial, and practical burdens nobody else wanted to acknowledge. My mother doesn't rule by volume. She rules by temperature shifts. She can make a room warm or icy without lifting a finger. Her silence commands obedience better than most people's anger. My father simply drifts around her moods like a satellite that never breaks orbit. My brothers either preach unity that requires my sacrifice or joke their way out of responsibility. And me, I became the quiet foundation everyone stood on while pretending they built the house themselves. But there's a dangerous moment in life when you realize that what you called love was actually labor. That what you interpreted as duty was taken as obligation. That what you offered without asking became something others considered a birthright. Helping is kindness. Being expected to help is exploitation. Being blamed for not helping becomes manipulation. And when my mother told me to stop relying on the family, casually, confidently, like the conclusion was obvious, it didn't just sting. It rewired something in me. Suddenly, I wasn't hurt. I was awake. Because for them, reality was twisted. They believed I depended on them. But in truth, they had depended on me for years. And once you notice the imbalance, once you really see it, there is no going back to blindness. Suddenly, every memory sharpens, every dynamic becomes visible, every silence makes sense. I realized one simple truth. They weren't pushing me away. They were hoping I'd stay in my role forever. So I stood up from the table calmly, chairs scraping against the floor in a slow, metallic warning. No drama, no tears. I said, okay. Just that. And for the first time in my life, my mother blinked, caught off guard by the lack of reaction she could manipulate. I left without rushing, coat on, keys in hand. No one tried to stop me. No one asked why. They just watched the foundation walk out of the house. They had no idea the earthquake they had just triggered. The cold outside was honest, sharper than the warmth inside, cleaner than the stale approval I had spent years chasing. I sat in my car, hands steady, breath steady, heart steady. That steadiness frightened me more than anything they had said. I wasn't numb, I was clear. The drive home felt like moving through a tunnel of realization. Not replaying my mother's exact words, but replaying the silence afterward, the collective agreement disguised as apathy. That wasn't a misunderstanding. That was consensus. When I reached my apartment, the quiet felt different. Not lonely, liberating. Like the space had been waiting for me to arrive fully, not diluted by obligation. I put my bag down, removed my shoes, stood in silence. And then, without hesitation, I pulled out a suitcase. Not to run, not to escape. To separate. Every folded shirt felt like reclaiming territory I had surrendered for years. The zipper closing wasn't an ending, it was a declaration. Then I opened my laptop. The blue glow hit my face and illuminated the truth, my truth. Tabs opened like files in my memory. Accounts I managed quietly. Bills I covered automatically. Services that ran because I ran them. Payments that flowed like invisible lifelines nobody noticed until they stopped. Heating. Internet. Maintenance. Insurance. One time, emergency payments that became regular. Tuition support. Repairs. Cabin utilities. Subscriptions. Hidden favors. Line after line after line. I stared not in shock, but in recognition. This was the weight I had carried, and they said I relied on them. Their entire ease of living ran through the backbone of my silent labor. And that was the moment I accepted the truth. I wasn't dependent on them. They were dependent on me. So I clicked. Cancel autopay. Cancel recurring. Cancel convenience. Cancel expectation. Not revenge. Not anger. Alignment. My decision wasn't loud. It was precise. The world didn't explode instantly. It took 3 days. And then my phone rang. Bobby. What did you do? He yelled. The cabin's freezing, the heat is off, the internet's gone. Mason can't go this weekend. I stirred my coffee slowly. Then he won't. You're being dramatic, he snapped. This isn't fair. Fair? The word people use only when they lose access to your labor. You told me to stop relying on the family, I said. So I stopped. Silence. Then I hung up. Next came my father's voicemail, soft, pleading, diplomatic. Let's talk like adults. Translation. Fix this quietly so we don't feel consequences. But I didn't move. And the consequences grew heavy. For them, not me. 2 days later, an envelope arrived. Thick, legal. My mother had filed paperwork contesting the cabin transfer, claiming confusion, miscommunication, pressure. She wanted control back. She thought legal action would intimidate me. She didn't expect the clause. My lawyer skimmed the documents, then looked up with a slow, satisfied smile. All she did was trigger the reversion clause, he said. The what? The protective clause you signed years ago. If they contested or acted against your ownership, the cabin legally returns to you. Fully. Automatically. I sat back in my chair. So, I said softly, it's mine again. Completely, he replied, and they can't reverse it. For the first time, a consequence existed that I didn't have to enforce. The law did it for me. And for once, they couldn't twist the narrative. They couldn't guilt me. They couldn't control me. Their own attempt to dominate backfired. I scheduled a meeting, neutral diner, public space. No hiding, no yelling. They came tense. I came prepared. My mother tried to speak first. This has gone far enough. I calmly slid a folder across the table. Not legal threats, evidence. Every payment. Every bill. Every year of invisible support. My father's face drained of color. Stephen swallowed hard. Bobby's smirk fell apart. You blindsided us, my mother hissed. No, I said. I simply stopped protecting you from reality. Then I placed the cabin agreement on top. Reversion clause highlighted like a spotlight on their mistake. You contested it, I said quietly, so it reverted. Her face went blank, the first time I had ever seen her without control. I stood up slowly. You told me to stop relying on the family, I said, so now you'll have to rely on yourselves. And I walked out. No one followed. No one spoke. No one breathed. The foundation had left the building. A faint tremor ran through my fingers the moment I pushed open the heavy metal door of our old apartment. It wasn't fear anymore. It was instinct, the trained instinct of someone who has lived too long under the shadow of cruelty. The air inside was thick, silent, unnatural. Even the dust motes drifting near the window felt frozen in place. I could feel the tension before seeing anything, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. A chill crawled up my spine as I stepped forward, my heartbeat steady but heavy, controlled, almost cold. I had promised myself I would never let him see me afraid again. The wooden floor creaked under my weight. I looked at the crooked family frame hanging on the wall, my forced smile, his tight grip on my shoulder, the pretend happiness. That frame was the biggest lie of my life, and tonight I was here to end the lie forever. I had already anticipated his next move days before he even tried it. For people like him, abuse isn't random. It's a pattern, a cycle, a hunger for domination. And the moment he sensed the slightest shift in power, he became desperate, reckless, unpredictable. That's why I prepared. That's why I returned. Not as a victim, but as the storm he never expected. My footsteps led me to the study room where the curtains were drawn too tightly. I slid my hand into my jacket pocket and felt the edge of the small black phone I had placed there earlier. A burner phone, untraceable, silent, ready. I set it on the desk with a sense of deliberate calm. "This is your new number," I had told myself while planning. "This is the number you will use when everything collapses." I rehearsed every step, every escape route, every counterargument. When you have lived through fear long enough, fear becomes a weapon. And tonight, it was mine. A soft thud echoed from the hallway. I didn't turn immediately. I took a slow breath, controlled, steady. Then I faced the doorway, and there he was. His shadow appeared first, tall, rigid, vibrating with the same entitled rage that had ruled this house for years. He stepped into the room with that familiar smirk, one that used to freeze me, silence me, break me. But tonight, his smirk did nothing. I had outgrown that fear. My eyes met his without flinching. "So you came back," he said, voice casual but dripping venom. "I knew you would, you always do." I gave a slow, deliberate smile, one that confused him instantly. "No," I replied. "I didn't come back, I came to finish." His expression changed, but before he could speak again, the emergency file I had placed earlier slid slightly off the desk. His eyes flicked to it. He recognized it. The documents, the recordings, the photographs, the bank statements, months of evidence I had collected in silence. Evidence strong enough to destroy him legally, socially, financially. His confidence cracked for the first time. He lunged forward, trying to grab the file, but I stepped between him and the desk, blocking him like a wall of steel. "You think you can threaten me?" he sneered. "No," I said calmly. "I can expose you." The silence between us sharpened, slicing through the room. His face twisted with anger. He grabbed my arm, expecting the same flinch he used to provoke. But I didn't move. His grip tightened and I still didn't move. Slowly, deliberately, I lifted my eyes to his and whispered, "Try it. One last time." Something shifted in him. For the first time since our relationship began, he stepped back instead of forward. And that's when he realized he had already lost. He had lost the moment I stopped reacting. The moment I stopped being afraid. The moment I prepared the world for his downfall. As he moved toward the file again, the door behind him creaked. A second shadow appeared. His voice froze. His body stiffened. He turned slowly, only to find the uniformed officer I had called earlier standing in the doorway, arms folded, expression unreadable. The officer nodded at me once, just once, silently confirming everything was moving exactly as planned. My abuser opened his mouth to speak, but the officer cut him off. "Sir, you are under investigation," he said sternly. "There are multiple complaints filed against you. I suggest you cooperate." His lips trembled, not with fear, but with rage. He took a step back, stumbling into the corner of the room. That was the moment I finally allowed myself to breathe. I had predicted this scene exactly. His panic, his confusion, his downfall. But it wasn't over. Not yet. The officer deliberately dropped a pen on the floor. When he bent to pick it up, he whispered, just loud enough for my abuser to hear, "You messed with the wrong person." I turned away from them both and walked toward the window, pushing aside the curtains. Sunlight spilled into the room, bright and warm, chasing away years of accumulated darkness. The officer led him out the door in handcuffs. For the first time in years, silence didn't feel dangerous. It felt free. It felt earned. It felt final. The next morning, I woke before sunrise, not from fear, but from purpose. For the first time in years, my body didn't tense at the sound of footsteps in the hallway. No alarms ringing inside my head. No shadows lurking behind doors. The house felt different, empty but peaceful, like a battlefield finally silent after a long war. I stood by the window, watching the sky turn from gray to gold. A calm I had never known settled in my chest. I didn't realize how heavy fear was until it was gone. But peace was only half the battle. The war continued outside these walls, on paper, in courtrooms, in statements, in evidence that had to be airtight. I wasn't naive. Men like him rarely accepted defeat easily. He would try manipulation, victim playing, fake tears, fake apologies, whatever might save his reputation. But I had already anticipated every angle. That was the difference now. I was no longer reacting. I was leading. I sat down at my desk, opened the emergency file, and spread out the documents. Each page represented a moment of pain, humiliation, or betrayal, now transformed into power. Legally admissible, chronologically arranged, verified. I had spent months doing this quietly, strategically, recording every threat, documenting every bruise, saving every message, filing every bank record he tried to hide. I wasn't collecting memories. I was collecting ammunition. That's when my lawyer called. "Good morning," she said. "Are you ready?" Her tone was direct but not cold. She had seen cases like mine too many times. But this one, she told me, was different, because I wasn't walking in broken. I wasn't walking in afraid. I was walking in prepared. "As ready as justice needs me to be," I replied. We reviewed everything again. Timelines, witness statements, financial trails, medical reports, audio recordings, digital backups, duplicates stored on cloud servers and locked drives. Nothing could be erased. Nothing could be twisted. Nothing could be dismissed as misunderstanding. When victims stop being silent, abusers start trembling. The courthouse was crowded when I arrived. He was already inside, sitting with his attorney, trying to look composed. But his eyes betrayed him. The moment he saw me, his jaw tightened. Not out of confidence, out of fear, out of realization. Out of the understanding that his dominance was dissolving publicly, permanently. His lawyer stood up, trying to approach me with a smirk. "We can settle this," he said smoothly. "No need to ruin his life." I smiled, slow and steady. "He ruined his own life," I answered. "I'm just exposing the truth." He didn't smile after that. Inside the courtroom, the judge listened silently as we presented evidence. One piece at a time. Clear, undeniable, sharp enough to slice through every excuse he tried to make. His voice, once forceful, now cracked whenever he attempted to speak. His stories changed. His tone faltered. His lies tangled. The judge noticed everything. And when the audio recordings began to play, the threats, the insults, the admissions, his confidence shattered completely. He slumped in his seat, unable to look up. His attorney placed a hand on his shoulder, but even he looked defeated. By the time the session ended, the judge announced, "This case will continue with strict legal scrutiny. The evidence presented is substantial and concerning." He froze. He had expected me to show up shattered. Instead, I showed up armed with the truth. That day, the power shifted permanently. I walked out of the courthouse into the evening light, the wind cool against my face. I didn't feel triumphant yet. That would come later. For now, I felt something even stronger: certainty. I wasn't fighting anymore. I was winning, and the world was witnessing it. Little did he know. I had saved the most devastating evidence for the final hearing. The days that followed were filled with an intensity I had never felt before. Every hour was dedicated to building the final blow, one that would not just punish him, but prevent him from ever hurting anyone again. I met with investigators, digital analysts, and specialists who verified every document with ruthless precision. No loose ends, no gaps, no doubts. For the first time in my life, I felt the law standing beside me instead of against me. Meanwhile, he tried every trick in the book. He called relatives to paint himself as the victim. He told friends fabricated stories about my mental instability. He even contacted fake witnesses who were ready to lie for him. But the moment they learned the investigation was being monitored by the court, they vanished like shadows under sunlight. Desperation has a smell, and he reeked of it. One evening, as I returned home from yet another meeting with the legal team, I noticed a familiar figure waiting near the entrance. A woman, nervous, shivering, clutching her handbag like a shield. "Are you her?" she asked softly. "Yes," I replied, though cautiously. She stepped closer, tears gathering in her eyes. "I'm his ex-fiancé. He did the same things to me. Worse, I never had the courage to speak. But when I heard you filed a case, I knew this was the moment." Her voice broke. I guided her inside, offered her water, listened as she poured out years of suppressed torment. It was like hearing my own past from someone else's mouth. But this time, instead of breaking me, it strengthened me. She agreed to testify. She brought her own file of evidence, recordings, messages, pictures, proof that he was not just an angry man, but a pattern of cruelty repeated across years. When my lawyer saw the new evidence, she whispered, "This case is sealed. He has no escape." But something inside me refused to relax until the final verdict. The night before the last hearing, I sat alone in the dim glow of my desk lamp. I opened the emergency file one last time, touched every page, reread every note, not because I doubted anything, but because I wanted to remember the journey, every scar, every sleepless night, every moment I thought I wouldn't survive. And then I looked at myself in the mirror. Not the timid version who walked on eggshells. Not the silenced version who swallowed her own voice. Not the fearful version who apologized for things she didn't do. But the version I had become. Calm. Strategic. Unshakable. A warrior sculpted by her own pain. I slept peacefully that night. The next morning, the courtroom was packed. Reporters whispered. Cameras flashed. My ex-fiancé supporter sat beside me, her hands trembling but her spine straight. My lawyer organized her documents with military precision. And then he entered. For the first time ever, he looked small. Not physically, emotionally, spiritually, morally, the weight of consequences had finally crushed him. His arrogance had evaporated. His eyes darted around the room like a trapped animal. He tried to avoid my gaze but failed, because deep down he knew. This was the end of his empire of abuse. When the judge called my name, I stood tall. My voice didn't shake. My hands didn't tremble. The courtroom became so silent that even the sound of paper turning echoed. I presented everything. One. Final. Time. Every lie dismantled. Every manipulation exposed. Every bruise given a voice. Every moment of silence transformed into evidence. When his turn came, he couldn't speak. His voice cracked. His explanations contradicted themselves. His lawyer stuttered. His story crumbled like ash. And then, the judge asked him a question he didn't expect. "Do you deny the audio recording where you admitted your actions?" His throat tightened. Sweat rolled down his forehead. And he said nothing. That silence was louder than any confession. The judge nodded slowly. "Very well, I have heard enough." My heartbeat thudded, steady and powerful. This was it. The moment my entire life had been moving toward. The courtroom air thickened as the judge lifted the final document. Every eye in the room locked onto him. His voice carried the weight of justice, strength, and absolute finality. After reviewing all evidence submitted, after evaluating testimonies from multiple witnesses, after examining digital, financial, medical, and recorded proof, this court finds the accused guilty. Gasps filled the room. But I didn't gasp. I exhaled. A long, slow, liberating breath that seemed to escape from years of imprisonment. My abuser's face went pale, drained of every ounce of fake confidence he had ever worn. His shoulders collapsed inward. His hands trembled uncontrollably. His lawyer closed his eyes in defeat. But the judge wasn't finished. In addition to the charges, this court orders full restraining order, effective immediately. Financial restitution to the victim. Mandatory psychological evaluation. Public record of conviction. Loss of professional license. And no eligibility for bail. The courtroom fell silent again. My lawyer squeezed my hand, whispering, "It's over." But I knew it wasn't just over. It was history. Because justice hadn't just been served. It had been delivered with surgical precision. The officer stepped forward to escort him away. But before leaving, he turned to look at me, not with rage, not with arrogance. With fear. Real fear. The same fear he once forced into me. And that was the final victory. Not revenge. Not violence. Not destruction. Power. My power. Reclaimed. Unshakable. Complete. He opened his mouth as if to beg, but the officer tightened the cuffs and pulled him away. For the first time, he couldn't command, threaten, or manipulate anyone. He was just another criminal facing the consequences he thought he was above. The court dismissed everyone. Reporters rushed to me, but I didn't stop. I walked out of the courthouse with slow, steady steps, each one lifting 1,000 invisible weights off my shoulders. Outside, the sky was bright, warm, almost poetic. The sunlight hit my face like a blessing, like freedom. People passed by with smiles. Birds flew overhead. Cars hummed in the distance. Life moved. And finally, so could I. As I reached the steps outside the courthouse, his ex-fiancée approached quietly. "You saved us," she whispered. "All of us." I shook my head gently. We saved ourselves, we spoke, we stood, and we ended this. She hugged me, trembling, this time from relief, not fear. I headed home with a sense of wholeness I had never felt. The house, once a prison, now felt like a sanctuary. I made tea, sat by the window, and allowed myself to feel pride. Not shame, not confusion, not guilt. Pride. Because I didn't just survive. I conquered. And when night fell, I recorded the final message for my audience. My story, my truth, my victory. My voice was calm, steady, strong. Not a whisper of fear remained. And with that, the story finally finds its rightful peace. After all the suffering, after all the injustice, truth stood firm and justice prevailed. If this journey touched your heart or gave you something to reflect on, I would be truly grateful if you could like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support is not just a button. It is encouragement, blessing, and strength for me to continue creating meaningful stories for you. Thank you for being here, and may peace and good health always stay with you. I ended the recording, closed my eyes, and let the quiet fill the room. Not fear. Not silence. Freedom.